I'm going to be laughing about that for a while. I think that was the best Dr. Goodword yet. I can't believe how Al is taking over everything, just everywhere I look. There he is. Wow. Okay. All right, so time to look at the Bible for a little while. More of those quotes from Jesus and the brother that we're going to be looking at today. So sometimes it is difficult to see spiritual realities. Things that are spiritual don't just pop out like looking at something physical. And so we need all kinds of illustrations. That's why we have things, like the Dr. Goodword show. And that's why Jesus continually uses illustrations and analogies, because he's trying to help us understand and then change. So that's why we always start out with an illustration. And our illustration for today is going to be about actors. Actors. All right, so who is this? Not this guy. Who's this? So I asked Al this week, who is the most famous actor in the world? And Al says, at least the Al that I asked, says it's Tom Cruise, okay? Now, I don't think so. Tell me, who is this? I think Dr. Goodword should be the most famous actor in the world. And I love this look. I'm imagining he's actually looking at Tom Cruise like, okay, who is this guy? Come on, who is this guy? All right, so these guys are both actors. Tom Cruise is okay, but they're both excellent. Very high-end, top tier, some of the best actors in the world. Now, they are actors. Are they... Tom and the doctor are actors. Are they hypocrites? What would you say? Well, Dr. Goodword is written to be a hypocrite, right? That's like the whole thing in some ways. Or at least he's saying the wrong things. The reason I'm asking this is because both of these ideas will come up today. And this word, hypocrite, which Jesus used very often, originally, before Jesus got a hold of it, just meant actor. Did you know that? Before Jesus was around, the word hypocrite in ancient Greek just meant an actor. And in fact, it meant an actor in a particular way or with a particular history of that word. The word is broken into two parts. It means under. The first part means under. And the second part means to interpret or to speak. So a hypocrite is someone who speaks from underneath. From underneath what? It's someone who speaks underneath a mask. Hold that idea in your mind as we go through the message today. Ancient actors in the Greek and Roman world always performed wearing some kind of mask. So hypocrite was just a word. It was the speakers under the mask. It was an actor, just like our word actor. That's what it meant. Sometimes the masks were quite serious. Sometimes they were bizarre. We always see them looking very, stonish, but they were all painted, right? So the masks looked something a lot more like this. They were very vibrant, a lot of fun. Now, Jesus got a hold of this word, and he used it to try and help us understand something about what's going on in our hearts. So let's go through a couple things Jesus says about hypocrites. And it's really interesting, actually, if you replace the word hypocrite in some of Jesus's quotes with the word actor, which is how people would have heard this originally. So Jesus says to the Pharisees, when you give to the needy, do not announce it with trumpets as the hypocrites do in the synagogues and on the streets to be honored by others. Truly, I tell you, they have received their reward in full. It's really interesting to replace that with actors. When you give to the needy, don't announce it like the actors do in all the churches so that people will honor them. Or here's another one. We'll go through you could also replace it with pretenders. This is the kind of thing he's getting at. Not that they are literally actors, right? He's not saying that's their job or their profession. He's saying, quite obviously, that the religious leaders were just pretending to be good people in some sense in order to be honored by others. the pretenders, the actors. Here's another one. You hypocrite, first take the plank out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye. And if we replace that, you actor, you're just playing around. You're just pretending that you don't have this plank in your own eye. You faker is another great way to put it. This brings to life some of the meaning, what the impact that Jesus' words had at first, rather than hypocrite, which we take as always a bad thing, right? And last one from Jesus, woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You are like whitewashed tombs, which look beautiful on the outside, but on the inside are full of bones and of the dead and of everything unclean. We can replace this with the idea of being actors. You Pharisees are just actors. You just put on this mask on the outside, but inside you haven't changed at all. And then it's acting. You are full of acting and wickedness. Now, here's the thing. Jesus' use of this word is incredibly powerful. He's trying to show us a spiritual reality, right? We put on masks very often. We pretend to be things that we are not, even sometimes when we don't realize it. We might do something and then later realize, looking back on what we did, we might realize why we did it. Oh, I just did that to be impressive. Or I just did that so those people would like me. Or I just did that because I was embarrassed and kind of trying to defend myself in some way. He's trying to help us see what's on the inside. Now, we're going to use this illustration in two ways as we go through the passage in James chapter 3 today. But we need to do one more thing to use it in the second way, because I'm going to show you something crazy that happened in the history of the church. Let me ask you a question that's going to be really obvious. When Jesus talked about all these hypocrites, all these actors, was he saying that acting is bad? Was he saying that people who go on stage and put on a presentation are evil? Well, this is, in the early church, what happened as a result of Jesus' use of this word. He used this word in such a powerful way in the Sermon on the Mount and other places that the early church went on a mission to end hypocrisy. They were very focused, especially in those early days, and still today we are, on ending things like pretense, faking it, deception. All those things have to be rooted out all the way from our hearts, from deep inside of us. And that's a good intention. The early church, you could say, was very zealous to end hypocrisy. Zealous means, having energy, having drive, having passion to get rid of something in this case. But sometimes our zeal can go off in the wrong direction. You ever been zealous for something and then somehow your zeal, it kind of got corrupted and it turned on maybe other people? So here's what happened within the first couple hundred years in the early church. They were on a mission to end hypocrisy, and some of the early church leaders went on a mission to end acting. I'm not even kidding. Not at all. Let me give you a couple of quotes. The mission to end acting in the church lasted for about 1,000 years, where actors were considered evil. Evil. Let me give you a couple quotes just to show you how intense this was. Here's Tertullian in a work that's actually called About the Shows, right? You can think of it as about the movies or about acting. And this is in the 200s, 300s. The author of truth loves no falsehood. All that is pretended is adultery in his sight. The person who counterfeits their voice, their sex, their age, who fakes love, wrath, groans, or tears, will not meet with God's approval, for he condemns all hypocrisy. What? I bet Carl had no idea that when he changed his voice, he was going to be condemned. All right. Here's another one. If God has commanded us to put away all hypocrisy, now remember this word now had a dual meaning. because it just meant actors before, but then it came to mean something negative because of how Jesus used it. And this is several hundred years later. God certainly will not hold that man innocent who changes his face, which was made in the image of God, into a mask. You cannot love the truth if you are fond of a lie. And what is an actor but a living lie? This became maybe not the only view in the church, but many, many people in the church, many Christians for a long time thought this way. Here's the final one. Can the lips that have praised Christ utter praise for an actor? This idea that actors are hypocrites. So I want you to hold two things from this illustration. The first one is this idea. What does it mean to be a hypocrite? And what is Jesus trying to show us? Because that's going to come up in the passage we look at. In fact, that very word, hypocrite, is going to come up. And then the second one is, what happens sometimes when we get zealous for something, but our zeal goes off in the wrong direction? Sometimes our zeal can lead us the wrong way, as happened in this case. It's obvious that Jesus was not talking about acting is evil. He was trying to teach us something about our hearts, which James is also going to teach us in chapter 3 today. All right, so this section in chapter 3 of James, and we're going to call this message Real Wisdom. He talks about it as wisdom, and wisdom from above versus wisdom that is from the earth, from the world. And if you were he talks about wisdom versus foolishness. I think these words came across a lot more blunt in the past when people read these originally. So my subtitle for this message is Don't Be an Idiot, okay? Real wisdom, I think what James is getting at is don't be a fool. Don't be an idiot. Idiot is actually a great word to describe some of the stuff that the Bible is teaching against in many places. James is, of course, the biological brother of Jesus. That's something to keep in mind. In this message today, in the end of chapter 3 in his letter, like many other places, we see him kind of quoting Jesus. Over and over again, he's going to use the same words Jesus used, but he'll rephrase things, almost as if he heard it from Jesus maybe many times in many different ways. This is our... Oh, I missed a slide. Okay, I thought there were more slides there, but that's okay. Okay, so we'll start into the second part of chapter 3, doing good in humility, starting at verse 13. And this is where we're at is James has just talked about last week was all about words. It was all about how we use our tongue, our mouth. And he had this very deep idea that our words can actually lead our lives in a certain direction. Depending on what words we choose, it's kind of like the words are the bit in the mouth of a horse, or the words are the rudder, the steering wheel of a ship. And even though the ship or the horse is very large, and we could never push it with our own strength, somehow if we use our words in the right way, over time, that will lead us either toward good or toward evil. In the second part, or this last little section of chapter 3, he continues talking about words, both words and action together, which is always his focus. And he begins talking about doing good in humility. And we've used this word, we've said many times in the book of James that he is very focused on humility. Humility to James is like the superpower that enables us to become what we were made to be. It's very counterintuitive if you're thinking in the way of the world, right? Humility is not doesn't boost your ego. It's exactly the opposite of that. But James here uses the word humility for the first time in the letter. Who is wise and understanding among you? He begins with that question. So you can think about your own life here. You think about all the people you know. Some people are really impressive in your life, some people less impressive. Who do you want to be like? Who are the people you know that are truly wise and understanding? Are they the impressive people? Maybe sometimes. Maybe often they are not. If someone is really wise and understanding, James says, let them show it by their good life, by deeds done in the humility that comes from wisdom. And he shifts from there into talking about what this wisdom looks like. So he's saying here the same thing he said over and over again. You got to have the right things going on in your heart. So it's got to be a heart full of humility, directed by wisdom, and then it's got to break forth into action, right? So that's faith and then action combined together into one thing. So next, he's going to paint a picture for us, first of what it looks like to be a fool, what it looks like to be an idiot, let's say, not wisdom. And then he's going to paint a picture of what wisdom looks like. And our message today is going to be very focused on the particular words he uses, because if you read this section of James, it's very likely you'll just read it and say, oh, that sounds nice, because he lists one powerful, very deep word after another, and we need to stop and think carefully about what each of these words mean in order to grab hold of what James is saying for us in our lives today. He begins with the negative example, bad words from bad hearts. Here's what he says. If you harbor bitter envy and selfish ambition in your hearts, do not boast about it or deny the truth. In that one line, he describes essentially all the wisdom of the world and where it leads. But we're going to have to think carefully about that one line. He continues, such wisdom does not come down from heaven. It is earthly, unspiritual, and demonic. Whoa! He went real fast, real deep, real fast. For where you have envy, so here's the same couple of words he just used, envy and selfish ambition, there you find disorder and every evil practice. So there's a couple of words here that James uses, bitter envy and selfish ambition. He's using these to describe something that goes on inside our hearts, and he is saying something very strong about these words. He is saying that they are of the earth. These, if our hearts are this way, it's not from heaven. It's unspiritual. It's actually somehow physical, connected to this physical world. And in fact, it is demonic, and it's going to destroy your whole life in the end. So it's very important we have some kind of idea, what is he talking about? What is bitter envy and selfish ambition? So here we go. Here's the first word that he says. It's actually two words in the original text. It's often translated bitter envy because what he says literally is a little hard to understand at first sight. What he says literally is bitter zeal. What in the world is bitter zeal? So we can use our illustration here from the beginning. Zeal was, the Greeks used this word like we would use the word passion or intensity or drive. It was kind of a neutral word. It wasn't negative. Usually, perhaps, it was positive. Like if someone has, we might say someone has a lot of passion, that's usually a positive thing, right? Someone has passion, well, it depends what they have passion for. If someone has a lot of passion for stealing, that's probably not a good thing. If someone has a lot of passion for putting other people down, that's a bad thing. But if someone has passion for helping others, or even just passion for building their career or changing the world in some positive way, that's really good. What is bitter zeal? What is bitter passion? We actually saw, maybe the best illustration of this today was in the Dr. Goodward video. So you've got the Oxford character, right? Whoever was playing that voice will remain unnamed. The Oxford character was played so well. That must be one of the top actors in the world, too. So that character was passionate about their career, right? Is it good to be passionate about your career and your job? Yes, it is. That's a good thing You were made to work. You were made to do good work in the world. But that passion, that zeal, can go off in the wrong direction. So sometimes we might be passionate about something, and then because we want it so bad, we might start to be bitter against the people who already have it. You see how, so I could be, forget about AI for a minute, I could be passionate about my career, whatever that is. I'm a pastor, whatever, maybe in your career you're looking at other people who are in the place you already want to be, in the place where you really want to be. And that might be something that inspires you, and that's a good thing. But it also can turn bitter, and you can start to resent them and wish that you could bring them down. This is what James means. Bitter zeal. The good things in our hearts can actually turn against other people. And that's how I'll define it today. So your first point you can write down if you want to write this down. Don't let your zeal, whatever your passion is, those are things often, they're things God has put into your heart. But if you try to do it in your own strength, and you're always worried about how fast it's happening or how you compare to other people, your passion and zeal can turn against others. And if it does, that's the thing that James is trying to point out inside our hearts. If it does, that's demonic. It's going to lead you to death. It's going to destroy your life. The second word, and this is actually just one word in the Greek text, the second word that he uses here that's negative, that he's trying to point out in our hearts, is selfish ambition. Selfish ambition. And here's how I'm going to define this word. It's only used a couple of times in the Bible. We'll look at the other place that it's used. And I'll put it this way. Selfish ambition is trying to be better than other people. And what James is saying is, don't do that. Do you see the difference? This is it's spiritually discerned. You cannot tell if someone is doing this. Maybe you could have hints of it by observing them and watching how they behave, but it's not really about what you do. You could try to be the best at your job that you possibly can be, or you can just try to defeat other people at your job and be better than them. You can be focused on your passion and doing what God has made you to do and glorifying Him, or you can be focused on how you compare with other people. And what James is saying is that even though you might be doing many of the same actions from either of those motives, those are totally different. One is heavenly and one is demonic. That's what he's saying. That is a massive difference. And often we don't pay attention to those things. He's trying to wake us up to what's inside our own hearts. Here's the other place where it's used in the Bible. It's in Philippians chapter 2. This is a very well-known, famous chapter where Paul describes what Jesus was like on the inside, full of humility. But right before he does that, he says this, "Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Instead, in humility, value others above yourselves." This sounds exactly like what James is saying, exactly. We could sort of rephrase this as, do nothing because you're trying to be better than other people or because you think you're better than other people. Don't do a single thing from those motives, the motive of trying to put yourself above others. Powerful ideas. All right. If you harbor bitter envy and selfish ambitions in your hearts, do not boast about it or deny the truth. This is the next thing he says. And this is important because here James is recognizing that it doesn't really matter. You're a believer, you're just out in the world, you don't believe in God at all. All of us struggle with these things. Christians also struggle. We are not just purely devoted to God. We often, maybe much more than we realize, do things out of bitter envy and selfish ambition. He's writing this letter to the church, and he says, if you harbor bitter envy and selfish ambition in your hearts, When you realize that, when God reveals it to you, maybe when he allows your circumstances to kind of bring it out, or you're thinking and praying about things that you have done, and you see that your motive was not pure. It was not for God in a certain situation. Your motive was to outdo other people and to seem better than you really are. If you realize that, here's what he tells you next. He tells all of us. Don't brag about it or deny the truth. Why would anybody do that? Why would you brag if you're doing things out of selfish ambition? But we do this all the time. Human beings do this all the time. We get defensive when something questions our motives or questions whether we're in the right in a certain situation. We'll come back to that idea in a minute. James moves into this next section where he lists off, using these words, he paints a picture of what a truly good heart with the right motives looks like. It's really a picture of Jesus. It's a picture of Jesus. The wisdom that comes from heaven, he says, is first of all pure, then peace-loving, considerate, submissive, full of mercy and good fruit, impartial and sincere. Here James gives us astonishing insight into what we should be building into ourselves. Here are the kinds of good words we can use and guide our life with. Here are the things that we want to become and to a large degree can become with God's help. One day we will become these things fully. But he says them so quickly. You can see, right? This is the kind of verse, at least this is what it's like for me when I'm doing my devotions in the morning. I'm reading the Bible while I eat breakfast. Any of you do that? Eating my breakfast, my Raisin Bran or my oatmeal, I'm reading the Bible, and I read over this, and it just passes over my mind. I don't grasp hold of what any of these words really mean or how they apply to me. So let's go into them one at a time. Pure, peace-loving, considerate, submissive, full of mercy and good fruit, impartial and sincere. We can't spend too much time on each one, but I want to give you an idea of what each one means. The first one, pure, he means pure motives. That's the context, right? He's recognized right in the verse before this that human beings have dual motives. We're divided. He says that in chapter 1 as well. Double-minded, he calls us. Some part of us wants to follow God, but another part of us just wants to be better than other people and get whatever we can for ourselves. So we're not pure. That's what pure means. Pure means all one thing. Pure good, pure evil. He's saying that we should try more and more to have our motives, our true passion, our zeal, be all about the Lord. Purely God and following him, not mixed with anything else. We can also look back to the Beatitudes. This whole section, as well as much of the letter, is deeply connected to what are called the Beatitudes, which Jesus gives in Matthew chapter 5. One of those statements, Jesus says, is, "Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God." Every person is moving toward a destination. This was our last point from last week, and the idea there was, right now we're mixed, right? Right now there's some good motives in us and some bad motives, but eventually we will not be mixed. We will all be pulled one direction or the other. One day, we will be all one thing. That's part of what's happening in this life. So make sure you're moving in the right direction. Make sure you're growing in the right direction. This next word in your Bible is actually peace-loving or peaceable. And he uses the word peace twice in this section. He's going to use it in verse 18 as well. And this word peace, I've translated it quite differently here. I'm going to use the word healing. And I'm going to give you an illustration here that will hopefully connect with many of you. The word peace in the Bible does not just mean no conflict. Right? Often in English, we think of peace as meaning not war, right? So when the war in Iran comes to an end, there will be peace. Well, not in biblical terms. The only way there would be peace is if the United States and Iran became best friends and their relationship was made completely whole and good. The word peace in the Bible means something much deeper. Peace, the Old Testament Hebrew word for it is shalom. You may have heard that before. And it means something like the way things ought to be. The way things are really meant to be. Not just getting rid of what's bad or broken, but completely restored and made whole. So when James, who is deeply rooted in the Old Testament, when he says we are to be peace-loving, what he means is we're to be people who are trying to make peace, trying to make things whole. We're to be people who are trying to restore the world around us. Okay, so here's my illustration. Does anybody like... Oh, too far. Come on, remote control. Now I got nothing all of a sudden. Okay, forget you saw anything on the screen. You didn't see anything. Did anybody like those old or new RPG games, role-playing games? Yeah? Like two of you? The role-playing gamers are really quiet, all right? So a role-playing game, there are roles, and you use the roles to play the game. What are the roles in a role-playing game? There's always at least 3. I'm only going to use 3 today, so I know there can be more. Often there's 4, or there's like 50, okay? But in a role-playing game, usually that's a video game today. It wasn't always a video game. And these roles, actually, historically, they go all the way back to ancient warfare. There's 3 essential core roles. And what's the first one? What is this guy? I know, you already saw it. Hopefully I'll just go one. The warrior or the defender. And what is special about the warrior or defender? So every role in the game fights. Okay, they're all fighting the battle. And you can think of that as kind of living your life. The warrior or the defender has all of these defenses. He can take a lot of hits. He or she, could be either. They can take a lot of hits. So they have, pretty good attack, but mostly they can get hit a lot of times and they don't die. So defense is the idea, okay? In ancient warfare, this was like the infantry. Okay, what's the next one? I'll just have you guys go to the next one. I think I've lost the remote. Okay, the next one. What is this guy? This is the second role. The mage, okay, or the wizard. All right, let's show what it is. And really the core, it is the mage. The core of the mage, this is the guy who throws fireballs, right, in many games. But the core attribute, the core nature of the mage is they are the attacker, right? They can't take as many hits, but their attack is really powerful. They can do a lot of damage with that attack, all right? So the idea in the game is all these people have to work together. Now, what's the third one? The third essential role, what is this one? This is the healer. This is the healer. Or the cleric. Let's put that up. So the healer or the cleric. It is remarkable that in most games, this is called the cleric, and they often have some sort of Christian symbol. Because everybody, or at least our culture, knows that Christians are supposed to be healers. Now, what is the attribute of the cleric or the healer? The main thing about them is they can attack, they still fight the battle, they still defend, they still take hits, but their main focus, their zeal, their skill, their primary ability is to restore other people. This is the kind of thing James is saying. Let's go to the next one, this point. I think this is actually quite a powerful way to think about what he said not to do and what he said to do. First of all, he has said, do not be a defensive denier. You can think of that like the warrior. You're just defending yourself no matter what. When you realize that something is wrong on the inside, don't just get defensive and deny it. Next. Don't be an aggressive boaster. If you realize something's wrong on the inside, and these are the two ways people tend to respond to things, right? Fight and flight. Something has threatened me. Something is telling me that I'm not good enough. I'm either going to defend myself against it or I'm going to attack it. And James has said, don't boast about it. What is he saying? When you realize something's wrong on the inside, don't just start pretending it's not. Don't just start saying, no, I am good. I am the best. I am better than those other people. It's their fault. Don't be a defensive denier. Don't be an aggressive boaster. Next one. Be a healer. Be a healer. Let's move on. Let's go to the next word here. Powerful ideas. We'll go through a couple fairly quickly here, and we'll get to the one at the end, which is also strong and transformative. He says we should be gracious. The NIV translates this considerate. But it really means when somebody attacks you, you don't just attack back. You bear with others, and you're slow to anger, like he's already said. Gracious. Next. One of the words here, submissive, that's actually not quite the right translation because there is a word in the Bible for submissive or submission, and that's not the word that's used here. This word is much better translated as teachable. And this is extremely important. It's just like what we saw. Don't be a defensive denier or an aggressive boaster. When someone tries to help you and show you something you need to improve, a teachable person goes, okay, they might be right, they might be wrong. Either way, this is an opportunity for me. This is an opportunity for me to examine myself and see how I can grow and improve in the right way. Be teachable. All of these words, he's painting a picture of what a truly, a soul that's being restored, what it looks like. And what you're supposed to do is compare your soul to this. Are you growing in these ways? Not are you perfect, are you growing in these ways? Next. Do you want to grow? On the point of teachable, you could ask yourself this question. Do you want to grow and become a better person, or do you want to be right? If you could only choose one of those, which would you choose? Next. Next, he says we should be full of mercy, very much like gracious, and good fruit. Again, here he's combining the fact that we have to have faith, right, on the inside, and action, right, on the outside. Next. Impartial. This one goes right back to what he said in chapter 2, right? He was all about attacking favoritism in chapter 2. You don't just pick certain people who are the good people and you give them all the good things and mistreat everybody else. No. In fact, one way you could explain this or rephrase this word, next slide, not a judge who favors their friends. That's what you should not be. You should do right. It doesn't mean you have to like everyone. I mean, there are going to be certain people that you are better friends with, and certain people that is harder, or they're harder for you to be around. But you don't mistreat anyone. You treat everyone fairly and evenly and justly. Next. And this one we'll spend a little bit more time on. He wraps this list up by saying that we need to be sincere or genuine. And here he reaches back directly to the word that Jesus used over and over again, and he flips it on its head. Can you tell what this word is? This is just a transliteration into English letters, Roman letters, of the Greek word. And hypocrite, I can't even say it today. Somebody who's Greek, say it. Not a hypocrite. There we go. So you put the A on it to make it negative, and this is the opposite of a hypocrite. That's what he's telling us to be here. The opposite of a faker. The opposite of a pretender. The soul that's being restored and redeemed truly by Christ on the inside will be more and more real, present, genuine with other people. It won't be hiding under a mask. This has nothing to do, he's not saying that actors are all bad. A lot of actors are bad. A lot of actors are good. It's not about your profession. It's about what's going on the inside in your heart. Next. We could think of it like, go through a couple. I should have put that up already. The opposite of a hypocrite. Next. he wraps up this whole section with this one line: peacemakers who sow in peace reap a harvest of righteousness. And once again, it's a line that just washes over our brains until we stop and think about what he's saying. Those who are healers, those who are trying to restore the world around them, they're going to be sending out good things into the world around them all the time. And what is he saying? He's saying those kinds of people will receive back good things, righteousness, a harvest. Next. We could say it these three different ways. Heal others, and you will be healed. Heal others, and you will be healed. We could say it directly the way Jesus says it. Next. Give, and it will be given to you. This is sort of a principle or law that Jesus put forward. If you want to receive, the thing to do is not to go try and take. The thing to do is to give. Exactly the opposite of what you thought. And last one, if we wanted to say it like a modern evangelical church, lots of churches say, we are blessed to be a blessing. Have you heard that phrase before? It's true. We've been blessed by God, and the purpose of that blessing is that we would bless others. But here James is saying something even further, next level. If you become a blessing to other people, you will in fact be blessed. That is his picture of the redeemed soul. Let's pray. We'll continue in worship. Father in heaven, thank you so much for your grace and your mercy, that in fact, all those words, that picture that we just painted of the redeemed soul, that is what you are like. You're not an angry God in the sky looking to get us. You're full of mercy and grace. You're trying to help us and restore us. You are healing the world, one person at a time, as we come to you by faith in the Lord Jesus. God, would you help us today? Help us to see a little bit more of where our particular heart, our soul is at. We don't want to see all of the twisting all at once, and you're too gracious to show it to us all at once. Show us a little bit more, and help us not to defend ourselves and say, pretend it's not there or brag about it, but help us to humbly submit ourselves to you and be changed by your Spirit. Would you make us on the inside more like Christ today? In his name, amen.